So I was rummaging around on the internet and I happened to come across a little interesting piece of perfumery information. Now, this thing, when you come across it at first, doesn't seem, all that special. What it is Givaudan's Fragrance Ingredients Index. And if you don't know who Givaudan is, well, they're essentially the biggest fragrance company in the world. So they've got lots of different perfumers working for them, and, they go and make perfumes for a lot of the big brands that you may well have heard of. So I happened to see this PDF, and when I started scrolling through it, I realized something that's a little bit unusual, and that is that they have these little synergies at the front of it. Essentially what they are is little binary combinations of perfumery raw materials that go to make up little accords. Anyway, like any self-taught perfumer would, someone who's not so used to seeing nice little formulas or combinations out and about, like a little squirrel, I decided to go and stash all of that information away. And today was the day that I finally decided I'm actually going to go make a couple of these things and see what they smell like. And in this video, I'm going to go and smell 6 of those, which I went and just made up. And there are some other ones in there as well. So if you like this video, let me know in the comments, and I will do maybe 1 or 2 more videos like this going over the rest of the combinations. Now, I will add, the reason that this document or this kind of book is actually made in the first place is not simply out of the kindness of Givaudan's heart, though it is a good thing to have. What it essentially is since Givaudan are a big manufacturer of fragrance ingredients, that means despite making their own perfumes and using some of those ingredients, they also essentially act as a supplier to a lot of the other perfume companies, both the big ones and small ones. For example, the fragrance ingredients that maybe, small sized perfume houses or indie perfumers use as well. So what these booklets essentially act as is a nice big kind of marketing thing for Givaudan in order to sell their ingredients. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because these combinations, they are specifically combinations between Givaudan ingredients. So the idea obviously is that you need to go and buy Givaudan's ingredients to make these combinations. That said, I'm not against Givaudan in any way for doing this because, I think they're an excellent company and they make amazing fragrance ingredients, right? And not many companies do that, like research new molecules and go create them. So, it's a good thing. I just thought I would make you aware that it is actually a marketing tool. But yeah, it's definitely a good thing to have. So anyway, let's get into the first 6 combinations. So firstly, we've got Ambermax 50 and Kephalis. Now, actually 3 of the ones in this video are going to have Kephalis inside them, so you may get a bit bored of it, but Kephalis is actually a lovely raw material, and it's one that I definitely recommend you have. Kephalis is essentially a sweet woody raw material, and I find it's a little bit of a woody amber note, but it's quite, it's a bit of a top to mid note maybe. I would say maybe a mid note even, but it has an effect in the top and the mid note regions, and it's this kind of sweet woody note. It's a bit of a cedar or maybe a slight piney note, but it's not sharp and fresh like something like a pinene. It's more of I would say a resinous ambery woody note that has a lot of volume. It projects a bit and it makes itself known, and it's a really nice well-rounded smell. So that molecule Kephalis is one I'd recommend. And in this first blend or accord, we are taking a combination of that and we're putting it with a little bit of Ambermax 50. Now, Ambermax 50, the 50 comes from the fact that it's actually diluted down to 50% as supplied by Givaudan, which is no worry because this material is very, very strong. And I like to think of this as a little bit of let's say a super amber, something a little bit like Amber Extreme. There's some other ones, other similar raw materials like Limbinol, and these are very potent woody notes, right? So you put just a little touch of those in your perfumes and you have like this strong woody smell. I think Ambermax to my nose is one of those, maybe not quite as powerful, but I don't know, it's still pretty powerful. So it's this kind of, I would say, rasping, it's a very potent woody note, the kind of note that some people don't like, but is also very popular because it really allows you to get these strongly, let's say, performing or projecting woody perfumes. So in this combination, we've got all 6 here. This one, yeah, it's like a decent combination. I wouldn't say it's anything that, incredible. It's like, but it's just kind of those 2 things together. But I think they blend nicely and they're kind of balanced reasonably well. It's a kind of a nice balance between them. And what it gives you is, I would say it's a fairly nice accord. It's just quite a simple woody accord. The Kephalis, the sweetness gives it a bit of a, overall woody base smell, and then the Ambermax just adds a bit more detail, makes it a bit more kind of in your face, a bit more fresh, a bit more present. So yeah, it's a nice woody accord. Yeah. Now, Givaudan say this is a great cistus note with pine, earthy, and fruity facets. So cistus, if you don't know what that is, it's essentially labdanum, that rock rose flower. Now, when I smell the combination, I would say it really reminds me too much of that, and I didn't really get a fruity aspect. However, I do kind of get a piney aspect, I think, from it, like they say, and an earthy aspect. So those you don't really get from the individual raw materials on their own. So it is kind of cool that you get that from this. And this accord actually reminds me a little bit like you've got something like a Theaspirine, which is more of a, let's say, marine note, but it's also kind of a bit like a pine foresty note. Something like that. So yeah, it's not a bad accord. Next then we have Ambrofix Flakes and Peonile. So Ambrofix Flakes are just Givaudan's version of the famous molecule Ambroxan. And I quite like Ambrofix. It's a version of Ambroxan which I'm a big fan of. Then the other thing, Peonile, which is a bit of a funny name, but I think it's meant to be related to peonies, which are a certain type of flower. It's quite a floral note. It's a bit of a petal-like smell. So apparently this one is meant to smell like an undiscovered fruit with fizzy green facets and a mysterious warm dry down. So all of these combinations, by the way, I've done at 10%, and I've left them for about an hour on the sensor strip, so they've had a chance to dry down. So this one to me, so when I actually initially put this on the sensor strip, it didn't, it didn't smell like that much, but now it's had a chance to dry down. I do think it's actually quite nice, The two things blend together pretty well, and weirdly enough, I do see a fruity aspect from it, which is weird because Peonile on its own is quite floral, and Ambrofix, I would say, is quite a marine ambery smell. And the smell I get from it is a bit of a lychee fruit smell. So it's that kind of quite soft, and it makes sense because a lychee is a fruit. I find it's more of like a light floral leaning fruit, right? A bit like in the same way that pear is a floral leaning fruit, because you can make it with a smell with geraniol, which is actually found in flowers like rose. So yeah, this combination is quite nice, and essentially what it does is tell you that if you are going for a peony note or something like that in a perfume, then you can add a bit of Ambroxan, which you wouldn't unusually do, it's quite a standard thing to do, then it'll probably smell good. And yeah, it's quite a nice accord. You maybe get a fruity facet from that without adding any other fruity notes. So it's always good to know, especially if you're trying to go for a fruity floral composition with just a light fruity note. Right, so on to number 3. And for number 3, we have Cyclamen aldehyde extra. Don't know what's extra about it. And we have Kephalis once again. I'll read you the description, and it's meant to be the wedding of spicy Kephalis and the fusing cyclamen aldehyde create a fresh, vibrant cardamome. I think it's meant to say cardamom, but because it's French, they were like, cardamome. Anyway, the really important question is, what does it smell like? So, well, it smells a lot like cyclamen aldehyde, which isn't too surprising since it's very strong. Cyclamen aldehyde is, I would say it's a lily of the valley note. It's kind of like a floral petal note, but it's a light kind of white floral note, a bit like any other lily notes. So like imagine a white, let's say uplifting floral flower, but I would say it leans in the ozonic direction, at least to my nose, but also has quite a distinctive powdery facet, almost a bit like a bit of a pollen, when you go close and smell a flower, you get that little powdery thing. So anyway, this smells a lot like that. Actually, the Kephalis, I wouldn't say it comes through that much, but does it smell like cardamom? That's the question. I would say probably not. Maybe there's like, I don't know, maybe there's a world in which it smells a bit like cardamom. Maybe it's like some kind of effect. But realistically, I wouldn't say it smells like cardamom. Like if you're making a cardamom accord, I wouldn't use this. Maybe there's some like context when you want a very abstract cardamom note, and for some reason this, maybe, yeah, I mean, I can kind of see how like in some very long-winded like kind of way, you could like kind of blag your way to this being cardamom, but it's not really. But yeah, whatever. So next we have number 4, and this one is Dupical and Methyl laitone. So this one is meant to be a fresh and transparent imaginary tonka flower. If you didn't know, tonka bean is, it's this kind of bean, as you might imagine. It smells a bit like coumarin. Actually, that's like one of the traditional sources or natural sources of coumarin. So if you know that, it's like let's say a vanillic kind of marzipan hay-like note. So, quite an interesting, quite a well-known note. It's meant to smell like the imaginary flower of that plant with creamy coconut inflections. Now, I actually went and smelled this before I read that, and I'm glad I did, because when I smelled this, I'm not gonna lie, kind of blown away by this one. Like, I was talking badly about the cardamom, but this thingy here, this is crazy. So the thing about this is Dupical, I don't really know how you meant to say that, is like a lily note, right? There's your classic kind of like slightly fatty, you know, watery, fresh floral note. Whereas methyl laitone is a bit coconutty. It's kind of like a creamy coconutty note. However, when you put these two together, it gives you this like complex woody smell, and it smells to me a bit like almost like fresh sandalwood, or in a bit of a cedarwood direction, which I was really not expecting. Like, you can smell the lilyness from the Dupical, and you can smell the coconuttiness from the methyl laitone, but it's like, normally I feel with methyl laitone, it really emphasizes the coconut creamy like tonic note, you know, when you add it to stuff. But in this context, for some reason, it really brings out this woody side of it, which is really cool, actually. So this one, I don't even think it smells particularly like the two things that go into it. Like, I would say this is a genuine accord in that the what you get out is not like the two things that you put in. So this one, I mean, you know, the more you smell into it, you obviously can notice them. But I think this one is really cool. So definitely worth trying. If you have Dupical and methyl laitone, put them together and let me know what you think. Right, so number 5, baby. And now we have Javanol and Nectaryl. So Javanol is a very potent sandalwood molecule. It's one of the many molecules that there are that help to mimic a, you know, synthetic sandalwood smell. And this one in particular is very diffusive, it's very powerful, it's quite light and creamy. And yeah, I think this one was used famously in one of the eccentric molecules, single molecule fragrances, because they just thought it was that great. So it's a powerful, you know, creamy sandalwood molecule. And then Nectaryl is actually kind of like a peachy apricotine molecule. This one is not so potent and strong like Nectarate, which has a very similar name. This one is more of a, you know, a softer, I would say it's like the, you know how Hedione for florals is like this kind of transparent, kind of a little bit warm background with a bit of sweetness. I'd say for an apricot or a peach note, Nectaryl is the same effect. It's like that, you know, transparent, radiant, kind of fruity, subtle background, like little thing you've got going on. So when you put these together, apparently it's meant to be reminiscent, I think that says meant to be reminiscent, of a pencil freshly carved, wow, at school. Surprising inflections of peach and patchouli enriching this imprinting smell. Now, I smelled this and, you know, I thought, so it is kind of a nice smell. And it's also interesting because I remember when I was working on the Scent Trunk perfume last year, I actually definitely had Nectaryl and Javanol in that at one point. So it really reminds me of that perfume while it was under construction. And it's a, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's like the nicest accord ever, but that's not what they're claiming. It is a kind of light smell with a bit of woodiness and a bit of fruitiness. And I wouldn't say really it reminds me of pencil shavings, if that's what they meant by carving a pencil. To me, that's more cedarwood Virginian essential oil. However, what it does remind me of, now I think about that, is, you know, like when you're kind of sharpening a crayon. So not a pencil, but you know the waxy thing that you have when you're like a kid. For some reason, this reminds me of the smell of a crayon. So I actually think if you wanted to make a crayon accord for some reason, this could be the way to do it. You take Javanol and Nectaryl, and there you go, crayons. Right, so finally we're going to take two of our friends from before. This one is Kephalis, who we already know and love, and the Dupical that we already saw. Now this one is putting those two together, and it's meant to be a beautiful, fresh, spicy blooming note with some cardamom, spelled correctly this time. But I shouldn't be taking the piss out of this. I mean, like, you know, I'm sure they tried hard. Bringing nervosity, I don't know what that means, and naturality to white petals. So I think that what they're saying is it's like fresh, spicy, cardamom-y, nice petally like. Anyway, I smell this, and it's funny because this reminds me like absolutely like perfectly of when I was making vanilla wood back in 2021 in the springtime. And the reason for that is because, so, you know, a little trade secret here, there is a lot of Kephalis in my perfume Vanilla Wood for my brand. And when I was working on that perfume, because it's based on a rainforest, what I was trying to do was add a jungle-like leaf notes to represent, you know, like the jungle canopy. And I was experimenting with a lot of lily notes. So Dupical smells extremely similar when it's in combination with the Kephalis. It smells just like the trials that I was making, and I almost released the perfume like that. But at the very last minute, I decided, you know what, that accord, it's very interesting, right? And this is exactly what I'm smelling. It's reminding me perfectly of that accord. It is very interesting. It's basically woody notes plus these like fatty like lily notes. However, in the end, I was like, you know what? The perfume smells better without it. And, you know, now the perfume, you know, people like it a lot, and I think I made the right decision. But this does kind of make me want to experiment with that again. And it's just so cool, actually, that it reminds me of that combination. So apparently I'm not the only one. Yeah, so it's an interesting combination, this. It's like honestly a very weird smell. I honestly find it hard to describe. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to describe, but essentially, look, if you put any kind of woody note like Kephalis or sandalwood notes with lily notes, it could be something like Dupical, but there are the lily notes, by the way, you can try this too. You get like this weird effect because you get this like milkiness kind of coming out of the wood, like really blending with like the fattiness from the lily notes. And you get this kind of, this weird thing because it doesn't actually smell that woody anymore, but it's like you get like a really wet feeling, you know, like it's just a strange, like diffusive, creamy, milky, wet smell. And, you know, I think it's a cool accord for sure. I don't know. I would try it out, experience it, and see if you like it. Let me know if you think Vanilla Wood would have been better with this accord. But yeah, I mean, it's a nice one. So anyway, I thought it was cool actually that they had that accord. So I'm going to look through this. Yeah, they've got a load of other cool looking combinations. I can't do all of them because there's something called Ultra Zur in here, which I don't have. But I can do probably most of the other ones for you guys. So if you want to see me do the other combinations, let me know in the comments. And, you know, regardless, honestly, of what you say in the comments, I may or may not do a video on those. I mean, I haven't got any plans yet. So, you know, if you all say, like, no, definitely don't do that video, then, you know, maybe I just won't do the video because, you know, I don't want to die. Like, I don't want to get, you know, like, I'll be on a witch hunt or anything. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you can use some of these combinations. Go try them out if you can. If you've got the raw materials already, then why not just go throw them together? And yeah, guys, enjoy your perfumery, and I'll see you next time.